All right, and we're in studio this morning with His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Martyn Roper. Thank you so much for being here with us, as always.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
So it's been a rough week for the Cayman Islands. We had the earthquake on Tuesday and lots of other things happening. What are your thoughts on the earthquake itself and how the situation was handled?
Well, it was quite a dramatic week, and I mean, first of all, I think we can be thankful that we escaped it with no loss of life and very little damage actually to buildings, which is a testament to the strength of our building codes and construction. I know it was very traumatic and frightening for many people, and I do think the islands did incredibly well to get back on their feet so soon, and I saw a lot of keep calm and carry on spirit from many people, and that's what you need in a crisis. I think, as I said immediately afterwards with the Premier, we clearly need to learn the lessons. I think we did a lot of things very well. I think hazard management did a very good job. The police did a very good job, all our emergency services, but we need to look at lessons learned, and I think one area around sort of public awareness of what to do in a crisis is something that does need attention. The National Security Council will meet on Tuesday. I've agreed with the Premier that we should look at some lessons learned and take some actions to make sure that we are better placed next time. I think also we can do better at getting information to people more quickly. There's a new app coming which will allow people to download that and then receive alerts directly to their phones sort of instantly. So there are things we can do to step up our performance in that area, but yeah, we should be thankful that we came through it, with as little damage as we did.
So today's January 31st. Another big event that may have some impact on us is Brexit.
Yes.
So what impact, if any, will Brexit have on the people of the Cayman Islands?
Well, let me first of all just say that I do think this is a genuinely historic change. It's a profound moment for Britain, for the United Kingdom. It's probably the biggest constitutional, legal, political and economic change in my lifetime, and maybe for over 100 years. But first of all, nothing will change because we're in a transition period until the end of this year. So there'll be everything changes and nothing changes in a way during this year.
Right.
I think the implications for Cayman are not great. I mean, most people ask me questions about trade, and there is very little impact on trade because there isn't a great deal of trade between the UK and Cayman. People do ask me about travelling to Europe, and whether there'll be any changes to that. So, for example, at the moment, all British Overseas Territory citizens can travel to Schengen countries, which is mainly the group of EU countries. There's a few changes, but it's the main body of EU countries.
Right.
BOT citizens can go there in any 6-month period for 90 days and visit.
Okay.
That isn't affected by the UK's exit from the European Union because that is a separate agreement, is not related to the EU. So for British Overseas Territory citizens still wanting to travel to Europe, that's not affected. For British citizens, that there is no change this year. There will then be some changes, certainly in terms of whether people can work in Europe, because Britain wants to control its own immigration policy. There'll be a work permit system, and that will probably have an impact on working in European countries. But so that all needs to be worked through. I think there is, I mean, the one question that people do raise with me is about impact on financial services. So the UK will no longer be around the table when issues around financial services are discussed in the EU. And the UK has stood up for Cayman and protected Cayman's interests in those discussions. But this means that the UK will find different ways of standing up for the interests of the overseas territories and Cayman. So we have a big mission in Brussels, which will still be there, lobbying, influencing the European Union. And we have embassies in countries all over the world. So we will be doing traditional bilateral diplomacy. So that's another area. The fourth one that some people are concerned about is funding. So there is some EU funding in the environment. The National Trust receives some funding. The UK has committed to maintain that funding for this year, and I would be optimistic that in future years the UK would pick up the funding that's provided from the EU. We can't give a guarantee, but that's certainly my expectation. So the impacts on Cayman are not great.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a big opportunity though, because as the UK leaves the EU, it's looking more outward to other parts of the world, and I think the overseas territories, there's an opportunity there to do more with the UK as part of global Britain, and we can perhaps come on to some of those areas in a little while.
So what's the mood like, not only from a government standpoint, but the people generally speaking in the UK?
It's been a very divisive issue over the last 3.5 years. It's no secret that Britain was pretty much split down the middle, and I think we now have an opportunity to put that behind us. I think we have to move on. I think the general election, which saw Boris Johnson win a very big majority, 80 majority in the House of Commons, that will bring stability now in sort of UK policy. I think it's good for Cayman, because I think it means we'll have stability and continuity for Cayman. So I describe the mood as people who supported Brexit are very optimistic, very confident, believe that Britain will now go out and identify opportunities in the world and make Britain an even better place to live. But there are still people who didn't want Brexit and still feel very disappointed and quite sad that this is where we are. But I think there is a sense that it is time to move on now and put this behind us and explore those opportunities that are out there.
So, Your Excellency, what does the future hold for the UK following Brexit?
Well, I think we will still want the closest possible relationships with the European Union and European Union countries, and that is absolutely fundamental. We're leaving the EU, but we're not leaving the European. We're not leaving Europe.
Right.
So, but under global Britain, the UK will, as a force for good in the world, want to continue to play a significant contribution internationally. We have one of the biggest overseas networks of any country. We're a permanent member of the Security Council. We have the links through the Commonwealth with all those sort of English-speaking democracies. So the UK will continue to see itself as a country which will try to help the world solve global problems, and that's what we've always done, and we will continue to do that. I do think there are opportunities for Cayman,
right.
And for example, I'm very pleased the Premier has set up the new Ministry of International Trade and Investment, and my office is working closely with them on that. There will be a big trade, it's called in Dubai, the Dubai Expo, and we're exploring whether Cayman can purchase space in that expo, so that will be Cayman having a global stage to promote financial services, promote tourism, and this is the biggest international trade event every couple of years. So that's one opportunity, and there are others. We've got the UK's Department for International Trade to recognise that it has a role supporting overseas territories internationally. So that means British embassies providing support to overseas territories, governments and companies. So I think there are a number of opportunities. Financial services, City of London, Cayman, with Brexit we should be looking at can we do more in that area to sort of work together and mutually support each other's economies.
Right. So how do you see your office and the UK government actually assisting with these new opportunities that may open up for the Cayman Islands?
And we work very closely with the Cayman Islands government, and my approach since arriving as governor has been one of partnership and building trust and working together. We'll come on to the regiment in a moment. That's one example of where that's worked incredibly well in recent weeks. So I want to see that cooperation continuing, and I think in terms of the UK leaving the EU, my role as governor is to make sure that Cayman's views are fed in so that they are a part of the UK's negotiating strategy, and that ministers in London understand what people in the Cayman Islands feel about this, and we factor that in. Lord Ahmad, the Minister for the Overseas Territories, has issued a statement saying that he is absolutely determined to ensure that the interests of the overseas territories are fully borne in mind in those negotiations. It's more relevant for some overseas territories like Falklands, for example, which has sort of big sort of fisheries issues, but it is relevant for Cayman as well, particularly around financial services.
Okay. So we can talk about the regiment now.
Yes.
Lots happening there very, very quickly.
Yeah.
For those who may be listening out there that may not know what we're talking about, if you could just kind of give us an overview of how this all came about and then where we're at now and where we're going.
Well, it came about, we had a visit last year by the Minister for the UK Armed Forces, who himself is an Army reservist. So although he was a UK Minister, he's trained as an Army reservist, and in his part-time he is an Army reservist. So he was very keen to explore whether we could set up regiments in the overseas territories. I immediately saw the value and benefit in this and said, yes, of course, we would be delighted to do that in Cayman. I spoke to the Premier just to check he was happy. He was also very excited about the prospect. So we grasped an opportunity and we moved very quickly to bring it into fruition.
Right. So now we're in the process now of actually setting up the regiment.
We are. We've had to move very quickly because our objective, and this is primarily about disaster preparedness. It's to have a group of people trained on the islands, engineering skills who, if, heaven forbid we have a hurricane here but we need to clear the airport. You have people who can go down there immediately with the skills to clear a runway and get planes landing again. You don't have to wait for external assistance to arrive to help do that. So we've recruited the commander and 2 senior advisors, and we've recruited the first 6 of the junior officers who for a year have to work for us full time, and they go off to get training, firstly in Bermuda, and then they go to Sandhurst in the UK, which is our top military establishment, and they will be trained just like any other person is trained to be in the British Army. I'm very pleased that 5 of our 6 junior officers are Caymanians, and they are former cadets, and this is a real opportunity for our Caymanian youth. It opens up another opportunity for training, for discipline, and companies out there in the private sector really like people having these sorts of skills. It really helps their companies that they've got these people with these additional skills. So this is disaster preparedness, and it gives us another, I think, really important tool to make us even better equipped in the future.
So once the junior officers go off, get trained, what happens next?
So the next step is that we have to recruit the first 50 of the part-time reservists, and the junior officers, the commander and the 2 senior advisors will help us do the recruitment of the first 50 who we want to be up and running by August. So we will have a troop of sort of 50 to 60 people ready and trained by August, ready for the next hurricane season. We'll then in slower time build up the regiment, and this is Cayman's regiment, so it's very much up to the Premier and the government to sort of work out how they want this to develop in the future, whether we keep it fairly small, whether we make it much bigger. That's up to us to really define. So the UK is providing the technical expertise through training, through some equipment, but it's really Cayman's regiment, and it's for Cayman to decide what it does and how best it supports and how it develops in the future.
Your Excellency, as we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add to your discussion this morning?
No, I mean, it's always a pleasure to come and talk to CIG TV, and thank you for everything that you do, and you had an important role earlier in the week in getting information out to people. I've been here 15 months now. It's gone incredibly fast. I think I'm the person on the islands who's eaten most heavy cake over the last 12 months. I love heavy cake, but I do get given a lot of it. And you give me a lot of food. I mean, I know how important food is in the culture of the Cayman Islands. But no, I'm really enjoying being here. It's, as my wife is as well. It's a privilege to be governor, and I am working as hard as I can to support the security and the prosperity of the people of these islands. And I hope that comes through in things like going to New York to support the financial services industry and the work we're doing on the regiment, and in making sure that Cayman's interests in the European Union negotiations are taken into account.
Your Excellency, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being here with us on CIG TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you.